The laughter died the instant the engine roared to life, because everyone on the airfield suddenly understood something they could not explain. The ugliest aircraft they had ever seen was the only one that did not seem afraid of the sky. The fighter sat at the edge of the dispersal strip like a wounded animal that refused to lie down and die. Its paint was wrong, deeply wrong. Not chipped by weather. Not faded by sun. Wrong by design. Jagged streaks of ash gray, bruised green, and muddy brown tore across the fuselage at broken angles. There was no symmetry, no balance, no elegance. The pattern looked unfinished, almost careless, as if someone had stopped halfway through and walked away. Men stopped what they were doing and stared. Someone laughed. Did he let a child paint it? Another voice followed, louder. Looks like it crashed into a forest and forgot to leave. Lieutenant Elias Vargas stood beneath the wing, his flight helmet tucked under his arm, his expression unreadable. He had heard every word. He always did. He simply chose not to react. It was the spring of 1943 at RAF Station Blackmere, and by then the war had stripped away patience, kindness, and the luxury of humor. Pilots survived on routine, superstition, and the belief that order, strict, unchanging order, kept death at a distance. Elias Varga had violated all of it with a paintbrush. Standard camouflage existed for a reason. Approved colors, approved patterns, recognizable silhouettes. In the chaos of aerial combat, familiarity saved lives. Varga's aircraft ignored every rule. Wing leader Hawthorne approached, his boots crunching against the gravel, his jaw tight with irritation. Care to explain? Hawthorne said coldly. Why my airfield looks like a lunatic asylum? Varga met his gaze without flinching. Calm, almost unsettlingly calm. Sir, he said evenly, because the enemy expects us to look like ourselves. For a moment, the wind carried nothing but silence. Then the laughter returned, sharper and more dismissive than before. Hawthorne leaned in close enough for only Varga to hear. You will repaint that aircraft immediately. With respect, sir, Varga replied, his voice steady. I'd like to fly it first. That was the moment Elias Varga stopped being just another pilot. That was the moment he became a joke. They named the aircraft the Scarecrow. Pilots wagered cigarettes on how long he would last in combat. Mechanics avoided the plane, muttering about bad luck. Men shook their heads as Varga passed. Only one man did not laugh. From the control tower, Flight Sergeant Tom Hale lowered his binoculars and frowned. He had seen too much lately. Too many aircraft failing to return. Too many pilots dying in seconds they never even understood. And Varga, for all his quiet defiance, did not look like a man seeking attention or rebellion. He looked like a man who had already buried too many friends. Elias Varga had not always been this quiet. Before the war, he had talked too much, laughed too easily, and believed too deeply in things that did not survive conflict. He studied art before he ever touched an aircraft. Color theory, contrast, the psychology of vision, how the human eye searched for patterns, and how it faltered when patterns were denied. During the bombing of Rotterdam, he had watched aircraft vanish against smoke and fire, not because they were hidden, but because the eye could not decide where to focus. That moment burned itself into his memory. By 1943, aerial combat had transformed. Aircraft were faster. Engagements were shorter. Survival often depended on a fraction of a second. Enemy pilots did not truly track planes, they tracked shapes. Varga understood that instinctively. In the mess hall, the mockery never stopped. You flying today or painting landscapes, Picasso? He never answered. At night, alone in the hangar, he walked slow, deliberate circles around his Hawker Typhoon. It was a brutal aircraft, fast, heavy, unforgiving. He studied how shadows fractured along the wings, how exhaust blurred the fuselage, how clouds dissolved edges. The camouflage was not random. It was calculated chaos. Broken bands disrupted recognition. Muted tones mimicked sky smear. No angle repeated itself. At altitude, the aircraft did not disappear. It confused. Command was unimpressed. Hawthorne issued a final warning. Repaint the aircraft or be grounded. Then came the raid. A German bomber formation slipped past radar at dawn. Sirens screamed. Scramble orders erupted across the field. Panic followed close behind. Varga ran for his aircraft. Hawthorne hesitated, just long enough to weigh regulation against desperation, then waved him through. God help you, the commander muttered. As the Typhoon thundered down the strip and lifted into the sky, the laughter vanished. In its place was something colder. No one expected what happened next. At 12,000 feet, contrails braided the sky. German fighters spread wide, searching for familiar silhouettes. They spotted aircraft everywhere, except one. Varga slipped between formations like a ghost with teeth. A Messerschmitt pilot fired and missed. Pulled up. Lost sight. Swore into his radio. Varga struck from below. One precise burst. The enemy engine ignited. The aircraft vanished in flame. German radios erupted in confusion. He disappeared. Where did he go? They could see him, but their eyes refused to hold him. The camouflage shattered recognition at speed. Every maneuver broke pursuit. Every cloud edge swallowed him whole. Back at Blackmere, radar operators stared in disbelief. Target blinking. Now you see him, now you don't. Varga returned with fuel fumes clinging to his aircraft and silence in his wake. 3 enemy planes confirmed destroyed. No damage sustained. The hangar did not laugh anymore. Command demanded explanations. Intelligence followed. Paint samples were taken. Sketches drawn. Pilots questioned. Varga never claimed invincibility. Only advantage. They can see me, he said quietly. They just can't keep seeing me. Trials followed. Then more missions. The results never changed. Kill ratios climbed. Losses fell. Whispers spread beyond Blackmere. Other pilots began to ask questions. Mechanics began to listen. Even Hawthorne watched more closely now. Morale rose. Success, however, attracted scrutiny. Higher command intervened. A colonel scoffed at the reports. Non-standard camouflage complicates identification. They're identifying us just fine, Varga replied. They just can't kill us. Approval came quietly. Limited authorization. Experimental use. The joke had become doctrine. The Germans adapted, as they always did. Spotters trained harder. Gunners adjusted patterns. Engagements tightened. Then one day, Varga did not return. Hours passed. Fuel windows closed. Smoke rose on the horizon. Hale found the wreckage first. Burned grass, shattered metal, no body. They buried an empty coffin. 3 days later, Elias Varga walked into camp, limping, hollow-eyed, alive. He had gone down behind enemy lines. Hidden by night. Walked by instinct. His camouflage had saved him on the ground, too. But something in him had been lost. He flew fewer missions after that. Yet his work spread. By late 1944, variations of his principles appeared across Allied airfields. Not copies, ideas. Broken symmetry. Disrupted contrast. Pattern chaos. Pilots lived longer. After the war, the files vanished into classification. Varga refused medals. He returned to painting. History forgot his name. But modern stealth doctrine quietly echoed his truth. Disrupt the eye, confuse the mind, survive. Years later, an old man stood beneath a museum aircraft painted all wrong. A child pointed. It looks ugly. Varga smiled softly. Good, he said. Because sometimes ugly was the difference between being seen and being alive.